Hi, shalom friends. How many kisses can you identify? Well, we'll start with some of the more obvious ones. There's the loving kiss. A parent sees a child and gives a kiss, an expression of love. There's also the respectful kiss, where perhaps someone, especially in certain cultures, you see an elder or a sage, and you might be told to kiss the hand as a sign of respect. So that's the respectful kiss. There's also the dutiful kiss, where you don't even know the person, and mom says, come on over and give Aunt Samantha a kiss. And you, as a good boy and a good girl, you go over and you give a kiss. Of course, there's the passionate kiss. And there are others as well. But I would like to share with you two more kisses. One is called a Chassidic kiss, and one will be the divine kiss. But before I explain what a Chassidic kiss is, I'd like to first point out an observation about kissing. And that is, of the different senses that we have, smell allows you to smell something at a distance from you. So you perhaps might smell something agreeable or disagreeable, even if it's across the street. You could certainly hear something from a distance, that person shouting at you from across the street, you could hear it. And certainly you could see out of you to a distance. When it comes to touch, though, touch is very immediate. So if your hand span is only 34 inches, no matter how much you will and desire your fingers to extend, they will not pick up something which is 36 inches away from you. So to a certain extent, the sense of touch is limiting. It has to be immediate. Yet, this very deficiency, if you want to call it, of touch is actually its greatest asset. Because we might smell something across the street and be convinced it's really grapefruit, but it's not. We hear something from the distance, but we're never sure. Did we hear it accurately? And even sight can sometimes be misinterpreted. Did I truly see what I think I saw? But touching is genuine. It is real. It is, I know this is happening because I feel it. So that's touch. And it has a tremendous effect on people. Sometimes you might be looking at a person, talking to the person, and yet feel that that person is drifting away. And then in a very, very kind way, you might actually touch the hand just to bring the person back down. And it's almost always effective. Certainly a child who's distressed, sometimes all of the talking won't do it. Just holding the child and embracing the child gives the child a sense of reality and calms down. So touch is very special. Within touch itself, the touch of the lips is magical. Now, there might be many reasons for this, and indeed, most of the lips is actually composed of nerve endings, one of the most sensitive parts of a human being. But I would just simply point out that when you shake a hand, or even if you embrace with a hug, there is a bone that person feels as well. So they might feel a warm embrace, but as we all know, a bear hug with love is not the same thing as a bear hug to dominate. And a handshake of welcome is not the same thing of a handshake to impress. Because there are muscles and bones in this touch. But the lips, it's soft, it's sweet, and again, the only word that I could use is it's magical. So now let's talk about a Chassidic kiss. What is a Chassidic kiss? It's not the way you pucker your lips at all. It actually deals with the heart of why do we want to share an emotion that cannot be expressed verbally and cannot even be expressed with an embrace, rather with the softest part of us? Well, immediately what comes to mind is a strong emotion, which we will call love. Let me take a step back with you and share with you a historical incident which became an eternal lesson for the Chabad movement. The fifth Rabbi of Chabad, his name was Reb Shalom Dober, and he only had one child. And that one child, his name was Yosef Yitzchak, and he eventually takes over the Chabad leadership movement, and he's the sixth Rebbe of Chabad. You could understand that all children are precious, and only child is awesomely precious. And being that Reb Shalom Dober, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, was a saint and a scholar and a leader and a mystic, he wanted the best for his child. So as the story goes, when this little boy was 4 years old and sleeping in a type of a crib, his father was learning with a colleague, and they were studying very intensively. Towards morning, the colleague happened to glance at the little boy that was sleeping through their Torah study and noticed that the face was not only pure and innocent, but he saw it as glowing. And he turned to the father and he says, a face that glows is not only because of innocence, but because of holiness. There's a purity of dreaming and of thinking that this little boy has, and it's reflected in a radiant face. The father looked at his son and looked at it through the eyes of what he had just heard, and he had a very strong desire to kiss his little boy. But then he decided to do the following. He said to himself, when a person would bring a gift to God in the Holy Temple, sometimes he would bring an animal, an offering, and other times he would offer gold, silver, copper. I'm going to give God a gift, the gift of love. And he actually wrote a mimer, a Chassidic discourse, which spoke about God's love for not only for the Jewish people, but for creation, by creating manifold creations. Morabu Masacha Hashem, how great, how awesome, how manifold are your creations, O Lord. And he wrote it down. When his little boy grew up, his father never shared with him that moment. When he was 12 years old, the father gave the son this writing, this teaching, and he said, my son, I'm giving you a Chassidic kiss, but I'll explain it to you when I feel you're ready to understand it. In the meantime, study this for your bar mitzvah, which he did so. At the age of 15 or 16, the father then shared with his young son, who was now already a mature young man, the background of the Maimah, explaining to him the great love and attachment that he wanted to bestow upon his son. He actually expressed it in a Torah teaching. Now, I certainly cannot do justice or even truly to comprehend the story, but I'll share with you some obvious lessons to me, at least. And that is, if I were to ask you, a child that grows up in a home without food, and he has to fend for himself, our heart would go out for such a child. That's called abuse, or perhaps worse. If I ask you, how about a child growing up in a home where they're given food and shelter, but they're not allowed to be educated? Again, that would be abuse. What about a child who's growing up, who goes to school, and the parents are encouraging his studies, but never gets a hug, never gets a kiss, never gets a touch? That is abuse, or that is something lacking. So now we understand parents want to give everything they're capable of giving to children? Well, this question is a little bit more pointed. What about a parent that gives his child food and shelter, love and affection, education, but does not give them a direction in life, does not give them a sense of right or wrong, does not allow them to experience what does it mean love or the opposite of love? What does it mean commitment or the opposite? What does it mean honesty or dishonesty? This is also a tremendous loss. In fact, if we put it on the list of hierarchy, perhaps a child could far easily tolerate not eating supper than coming to a home where he's not being taught the difference between right and wrong, or between expectations and desires. Simply put, the greatest gift, the greatest love, the greatest kiss you could bestow upon your child is an encounter with the divine, or an encounter with holy, a direction for goodness. When we think about it, God kissed us on Mount Sinai. And in that most beautiful of love poems called the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, we actually, verse number 2, Yishakenu min neshikos pihu, the Jewish people say, we have been kissed with the kiss of God, which is interpreted as being encountering God on Mount Sinai. And that is even more pleasurable. Ki tovim dodecha meyayim, the love, God, that you gave us is even greater, more intoxicating than wine. So, let me summarize. We're capable of bestowing great love, great emotion upon our children, and for that matter, upon our neighbors. There are many ways to bestow it. It could be a smile. It could be an embrace. It could be a gift. It could be something of knowledge. But most of all, to expose a person to the potential that they possess to actually feel God's kiss. Shalom.